If you've been watching the Yammie Noob channel for any number of years, you know that I'm a die-hard Triumph Daytona 675R fan. I've had 3 of the motorcycles. My current race bike is a Daytona, so when Triumph released this bike a few years ago, I was head over heels. I couldn't believe they put the 765 in the Daytona. They made it all carbon, all limited edition. But when I rode it, something didn't quite click for me. I was like, well, this isn't exactly the experience I'm looking for. But then, on the horizon, as if it were like magic, there appeared a fine Italian motorcycle that just might fit the bill. Now, if you've seen the channel, you've seen me reveal this motorcycle, and this is MV Agusta's F3 800 RC. Now, this might be my favorite motorcycle of all time. But today we're gonna find out if it can stack up against this one for the contention of my favorite sport bike ever. Stick around. So a big shout out to Eurocycles for loaning both of these bikes to me. I don't know what Chris, my guy over there, was thinking, giving me both these limited edition bikes to try out. But if you want to see what motorcycles they have for sale, hit the link down below. They will get you the Yammie Noob pricing on whatever motorcycle fits your fancy for your European needs, you Euro bike simps. Now let's talk about these bikes a little bit more. So in case you're unfamiliar with MV Agusta as a brand, they are a very boutique Italian motorcycle manufacturer. In fact, Ducati looks like some big 4 manufacturer compared to how many bikes MV Agusta makes. They only make the F3 on certain days of the week. Now, this F3 800 is the big brother version of the F3 675. Now that's their homologated super stock racing motorcycle that they use to compete with, but this big cylinder version of it is actually a more of a weekend fun track day toy. Now, RC stands for Reparto Corse, which means it's a very special limited edition racetrack specific model. So this one's gonna come with the SC Project exhaust, these fancy rear sets, this big Nissan master cylinder, all these things designed to maximize your enjoyment on the track. Now, why would MV build this bike if they can't compete with it? Well, it's more of a branding exercise for them to show what they're able to build and for their customers to enjoy. It's a similar story with the Triumph. Let's take a look. So I don't think the Daytona platform needs any introduction, but in 2006, Triumph released this 3-cylinder version of their super sport motorcycle. In 2013, it received a couple of updates, and then in 2018, it got sent off into the good night, and Triumph actually does not make the Daytona anymore. However, they did make this 765 version of it. So where does this 765 engine come from? Well, the Street Triple received an updated 765 engine, and it's also the engine featured in the Moto2 racing category. So this motorcycle features a lot of the tech from the Moto2 derived racing league. Now, if you look close, this motorcycle is basically a Street Triple. It's got the TFT dash from the Street Triple RS, the gauge clusters, a lot of the same features from that bike, and having owned and ridden one of those, it doesn't feel too dissimilar from one. So to me, it's a little bit of a disappointment that Triumph didn't put a little bit more energy into this. However, as you can see, it is clad with an aero exhaust, all carbon, and it's the same ethos from the MV Agusta. It's Triumph showing everyone that they can make an awesome race-inspired weekend toy. But I think we've talked enough. Let's get both of these bikes out on the road and see which one is my favorite.
When we talk about exclusive and cool motorcycles, man, the MV has to come to mind. This F3 800 RC is just so special. It feels so good going down the road. And if you're into sport bikes, it's hard to not like this thing, man. The sound that it makes, the way it carves up corners, that auto blip down, effortless riding here. It really exudes an air of exclusivity around it. And it's true. I mean, how often do you see an MV Agusta? It's this boutique Italian manufacturer, and just listen to the sound. Now, when it comes to whether or not the MV Agusta is my favorite motorcycle, I mean, man, it's a hard thing to answer since you guys know I love triple cylinder bikes. This one has a ludicrous amount of punch off of its 800cc engine. 799 cc's if we're being exact here, but it's just so special. I've never ridden any motorcycle quite like this one, and I really love how this bike feels like it's from you know, the sort of late 2000s. It feels raw, it feels analog, it feels tactile. It's got this ridiculously nice big master cylinder on it, radially mounted, feels amazing. The brakes are just fantastic on this machine, and I just love this thing, man. Now, one thing that's a little disappointing is the cockpit and the dash. You know, I wish that MV has spent a little more time dressing this up a little bit, but, you know, RC does stand for Reparto Corsa. It is a race bike for the street, so this kind of pared back nature of it, you know, makes a lot of sense for the type of motorcycle that it is. But boy, it just feels so special going down the road. And the way it flicks into corners and settles is just sublime. So I think it makes a really strong contender for my favorite motorcycle that I've ridden when it comes to these kind of sport-oriented bikes. But, you know, Triumph has their 765 Carbon Daytona. That's got a lot of good stuff to it. So why don't we jump aboard that and see how that feels. The Daytona 765. I've owned 3 675Rs, so you guys know that I'm extremely partial to the Daytona platform. And here on the street, man, what a sublime motorcycle this is. The way it flicks into corners, it's got that signature razor sharp Daytona handling that we've all come to know and love. Now on track, that translates to a bit of twitchiness, as you guys who have seen my video probably saw me talking about it. But here on the street, this limited edition Daytona just feels so cool. Makes an awesome amount of grunt, awesome amount of power, really shines through here. And it's a bike you can really enjoy on the everyday. I think that, you know, the MV, although it is ridiculously special and really laser focused, this is still a pretty competent street bike, and that's why it's in sharp contention for my favorite sport bike of all time, is that it's actually a pretty flexible and pretty usable motorcycle for what it actually is. You know, it's an all-carbon, ridiculous street bike, but, you know, they can still be definitely used on track and on road and that kind of stuff, you know? I think the big leg up that this bike has over the MV is this dash experience. The Triumph has these beautiful cut triple clamps right here. It's got the little limited edition logo, the Moto 2 logo. When you start it up, it gives you the little Moto 2 logo as well. It's very special. Now, the one area that I do think that the Triumph suffers a little bit is that it's just not quite as raw as the MV. And as many of you guys know, I do enjoy my sport motorcycles to be very, very raw. I like them to be pure, unadulterated, like real experiences. You know, I don't want anything watered down, and this motorcycle certainly doesn't give you any watered down sensations. One thing I really like is from the factory, Triumph gives you these Pirelli Super Corsa SP tires that are really, really grippy, and in the right street environment conditions just provide pretty much an unparalleled level of grip. Now, as an everyday rider kind of tire, I wouldn't really recommend it, but, you know, if you're a sport bike rider, you kind of deal with the, you know, 3,000 mile burnout rates of these tires and the fact that you got to be swapping them all the time. It's just kind of par for the course, you know. Hit this decreasing radius right here. I mean, the bike just, it's like a magic carpet. It basically rides itself. The one complaint I have about this machine that really detracts from its damn near perfect status for me is that it doesn't rev as high as the MV Agusta. This thing peters out at right about 12,000 RPM, 12,500. And for a super sport motorcycle, something that is designed to be on the racetrack and to be, you know, fully fared, leaned over, clip-ons, that whole experience, you know, you gotta give me 15,000 RPM, especially for a Moto 2 derived motorcycle. I really wish that Triumph had built an engine similar to the MV Agusta's F3 800 engine, because that to me is the pinnacle 3-cylinder engine that I've ridden so far. This thing definitely should be making about 150, 155 horsepower. You know, I don't understand why Triumph basically just gave us a Street Triple RS with carbon fairings here. It's not different enough to warrant such a price tag and such an exclusivity factor, so that to me limits it from its perfect feelings. But let's do something a little different, and let's talk to Josh about these two motorcycles.
Alrighty, Josh, I had an idea when I was coming back on the Triumph to get you on these bikes because I remember my first experience on a 675R was kind of life-changing. I remember it just felt so amazing, and I know you like sport bikes, so I really want you to try these two bikes.
I don't know what is wrong with you, but I could not be more excited. Yeah, haven't ridden a super sport.
Yeah, not even like an R6 or Gixxer,
no,
nothing like that,
nothing.
Right?
You know, it makes sense for me to start on a Gixxer, but
yeah, it does. You're a Suzuki boy, so
right.
Yeah.
This is gonna be totally awesome.
Which one are you looking forward to riding most?
That one right there.
The MV?
That one right there. It's got the sound for me.
Sweet. Let's get you on this one first then.
All right, let's do it.
So I remember when I first rode a 675R, number one, it felt like the fastest thing in the world to me. And number two, I just remember the ergonomics package. I remember just being like, oh my God, this feels like a land missile. You know, it feels like you said, like I'm a gargoyle. I'm on all fours and I'm just so committed on this machine.
So yeah, it does feel like that gargoyle position, but more than that, I feel like I'm in an attack position.
My favorite thing about sport bikes is just how easily they fall over on their sides, you know?
It's crazy.
Give it some gas and don't use the clutch. Quick shift. Just blip up the throttle.
Wow, that's so fun!
And if you want to, you can just slap it down a gear and it'll just go to the next one.
And it feels small, I mean, compared to the attack position on a Hayabusa, which obviously is very sport touring. But you feel like you're in a little ball almost on the top of this bike.
Yeah, it's a very tiny, diminutive experience, you know?
Does the Triumph feel the same way?
Yeah, the Triumph, I mean, these bikes in particular, so if you ever ride a R6 or an early generation R1, you know, they feel a lot bigger than these motorcycles. These triples from Europe are just really tiny and compact, and that's my favorite thing about them is how small they feel whenever you ride them.
So when you're riding a super sport, you're gripping with your knees and trying or doing your best to not put any weight on the bars, right?
Yeah, you gotta really ride it like a real sport bike. You can't be all heavy-handed on the front of it. You gotta, you know, work with your core and...
Wow! The quick shifter feels totally different when you're on the boil.
Yeah.
Wow, that's super cool. It's instant, like it's like a car changing gears. Like there's nothing, it just changes and you're still accelerating as fast as before.
Yeah, these triples have a ton of mid-range grunt, especially these bigger displacement triples. That was my favorite thing on the 675R and my race bike, is it just has a little bit extra mid-range punch over something like an R6. But, you know, I think this class of bike, this kind of 800-ish cc triple, I mean, it's so great for, you know, the very committed sport bike rider.
This is a cool way to ride a motorcycle. And riding the Triumph Street Scrambler up here, which is the most default way to ride a motorcycle, it feels like, you know, being a standard. Man, this is so different and it's so rewarding.
Yeah, these kinds of bikes, when you ride them and you get it right, it's extremely rewarding and really fun to get it right with them. And it's a big reason why they work so well on track, is because when you don't have any speed limits or crazy, you know, boulders on the side of the road or like grass and all that other crap, you can really enjoy them and explore them and just keep pushing harder and harder and harder. And honestly, these bikes have limits that, you know, normal riders can never reach. It's insane what they can do.
Much less an amateur rider on the street. But that's a good thing to talk about, you know, because these are sold as street motorcycles.
They're definitely sold as street bikes. And I think, you know, like I said, if you're a hardcore sport bike rider and you're discerning, you totally can ride one on the street. It's not the most ideal, but if you, I mean, you seem like you're having a blast on it, you know?
I absolutely am, yeah. Whoa! There's a whole lot of rev range that I'm so not used to. That's one thing, never having ridden a super sport, just not being used to going up to 13,000 RPMs or 14,000 RPMs.
That thing goes to 14 and a half.
It feels really easy to ride though, I'll tell you. I don't think, well, now that I've stalled it twice.
All right, so that was the MV Agusta.
Yep.
basically a race bike for the street. It's extremely raw, extremely committed. Now I'd like you to try the more friendly version of this bike, because this bike is raw and angry, you know?
Okay. I love this. Let's see what this has to offer. Oh, right away, TFT dash. Very, very cool. So some of those creature comforts. Wow, again though, I feel so in command on these curves.
Yeah.
And confident going faster than I would on an upright bike.
So what can you tell me about the Triumph so far?
It's less angry, that's for sure. It doesn't feel as raw. You feel a little bit more disconnected from the heart of the motorcycle. One, I can't hear it as much as you can the MV, but you don't feel the vibrations as much. Yeah, it definitely doesn't feel as raw. That comes through.
Yeah.
I really do like the way it puts on power though. It has a lot of mid-range grunt, and so doing like this stuff that we're doing right now before you have a straightaway to open it up is a lot of fun. It feels like you've got a lot of punch.
Yeah, to me, the Daytona, you know, it has basically the same engine as the Street Triple 765. So it's got naked bike grunt in the mid-range, whereas the MV has that big sweeping top end, you know?
Yeah, it's very smooth mid-range though. I'm used to, yesterday we rode the Super Duke and my SV with that V-twin. This feels totally different, less vibrational, a lot smoother, and I really like that.
Yeah, triples have a very velvety kind of nature to them. The mid-range is really where they shine.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this bike is awesome. Wow, it is easier to ride a Super Sport fast, that's for sure, which is very neat. It's very cool with as many naked bikes as I've ridden, knowing that you do get that out of a Super Sport. Like if you want to go fast, it's made for it. And it does feel better to do it on.
Doesn't it feel awesome when you start pushing on it a little bit? It's just like, yeah, more.
It does. It starts to feel weightless, and like all your inputs are instant and intuitive.
Yeah.
Yeah, it feels super good. And the amount of control you have in the curves and stuff like that, because when you're pushing it, the quick shifter on this one works just as well. I think this one works a little bit better in the low revs though than that one does.
For sure, yeah, it's tuned to have more punch in the low and mid range since it has that naked bike engine, you know?
Yeah.
All right, Josh, now that you got some seat time on these two bikes, let's head back to the shop and wrap this one up today.
All right, Josh, I wanted to put you aboard these two machines because I remember when I rode my first Daytona, it was simply a magical experience. My first Super Sport, it was everything I wanted it to be, and it was amazing. Did you feel a sense of magic from these bikes?
Oh man, yes.
Yeah?
It was so magical. Yes, so they're limited edition, they're special, they're sexy. It's awesome just riding one on the road.
Yeah.
Just knowing how cool you look and everything.
Absolutely.
But
this thing's fully carbon, come on. Like,
yeah,
it's
exactly. It's
ridiculous.
crazy.
Yeah.
But their performance is also top notch. So they're so confidence inspiring over a naked bike or something like that to go fast around corners, to lean. It really does feel different than riding a bike with bars. So my first time on the Super Sport today on these limited editions, it's kind of crazy, but it was extremely magical. And I want a Super Sport now. Like that's what I took away from today. What about you though? What do you think? Do these still do anything for you? Or you with a fully prepped, exactly how you want it track bike?
Yeah.
What's your take on these bikes?
I think for me, after riding so many different motorcycles, you often think that you're going to be jaded and things are going to feel, normal after time. But these bikes still tug at my heartstrings a lot, man. Like, I love the fully faired look. We were talking about it earlier. It's like, when you're a little kid, this is what you think of when you think of motorcycles. Loud, flashy, fully faired windscreen, going fast, full tuck, And something about them still does them for me. I think they're amazing. Yeah. And that MV Agusta just... Ooh, it's a spicy meatball. I really do love it so much.
So we're talking street bikes. Is this your favorite street bike ever?
It might be, honestly. Yeah. I think if you're looking for a hardcore committed sport bike experience and you want exclusivity, it's the MV Agusta all day. This is the bike that Triumph should have built. I really do feel that way. So I think that answers the question for today of my favorite street motorcycle of all time. I gotta give it to the MV Agusta F3 800 RC because I'm a Biscotti boy. And I'll catch you on the next one. See you later. Oh, hey, you're still here. I can't believe you made it to the end of the video. Not many people do. Just for you, I have a little treat. Hit this link over here. Check out the next video on the Yammie Noob catalog. What's gonna happen in it? I don't really know. Maybe there's a boost in it. Maybe there's some cool wheelies. Maybe there's some fun memes. Probably. Who can say?